In this lecture, we will talk about the directive principles of state policy. Now, the directive principles of state policy are mentioned under the part 4 of the Constitution, Article 36 to 51. Talk about the DPSPs or the directive principles of state policy. The idea is, first of all, they are the direction or the message to the state how they should function. So, they aim to provide social and economic equality, justice to all, promote not only national but also international peace and security under Article 51. So that is the paramount basis through which the DPSPs are released, and they can be classified into three broad criteria. We say either based on the socialist principles, the Gandhian principles, and the liberal principles. This is just one way of classifying the articles. We do have other ways of classifying the articles. For example, we classify based on the implication. So whether they are used for economic welfare or whether they are utilized for social welfare. Based on that, we do have another 5 classifications that we would understand. The idea of directive principle of state policy was got from Ireland. So as we mentioned in our previous class on the features of constitution, we saw the different elements of the constitution were actually assimilated from different parts of the world, and the idea of directive principle of state policy was brought from Ireland. Now, the first part talks about economic policy. The principles relating to economic policy focus on equal pay for equal work. That means, be it male, be it female member of the society, if an equal amount of work is done, they are eligible for equal payment. No discrimination can be made on this ground. There cannot be any undue exploitation of the workers or abuse of the workers, and that is again under the Workers Act. The next is, there should be no connection of wealth and the means of production, and they should be kept independent in order to ensure a proper economic growth. Everyone should have the livelihood, the minimum required livelihood. Now, there are various schemes, for example, through the public distribution system, distribution of food grains at a subsidized rate of rupees 3, 2 and 1 for the wheat, for the rice, wheat and the coarse grains is done, and this subsidized price indicates that there is adequate means of livelihood for everyone. The distribution of material resources should be done for a common good and a common welfare. The idea should be always welfare of the children and youth, providing them education, right to work, employment opportunities and public assistance in certain cases. When I say right to work, for the unskilled labor, if the employment cannot be provided, government guarantees through the Manrega scheme a minimum 100 days of guaranteed employment, which we would discuss in further as we move ahead. Providing a humane condition for work and also maternity relief. Then talking about the wages for the workers and participation of workers in the management of industries. Now, industries, when the management is going on, it's important that the workers who are at floor should be made party to it. So those are the principles related to economic policy. Coming on next is the principles relating to social, educational and cultural upliftment. These are also well addressed as the Gandhian principles. Right, so under this, organizing village panchayats under Article 40, promoting the cottage industries, the khadi and village board industries under Article 43, free and compulsory education up to 14 years of age under Article 45. Now this indicates free and compulsory primary education, but there is also some states, for example Delhi, which provides even free middle and secondary education. Then is promoting education for the weaker section, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes under Article 46. The respective articles are really important. The next, under Article 47, two important clauses. One is to raise the level of nutrition and to prohibit any kinds of intoxicating drugs or drinks. And under Article 48, organizing agriculture and animal husbandry. This talks about improving the breeds and banning the slaughtering of animals. So those are under Article 48. So these articles, which are called as the Gandhian principles, also are extremely important. Article 40 for village panchayat, 43 for cottage industries, 45 for free education, 46 for promoting education for weaker sections, 47 for standard of living, for nutrition and prohibiting the intoxications. The article 48, which talks about organizing agriculture and animal husbandry. The next is principles to protect the environment and monument. So to protect the environment and safeguard the forest, it's article 48A. And then to protect the monuments, it is article 49. So when we say protecting the monuments, any kind of damage, disfigurement, destruction, removal is considered as a threat to the national monument, and the places of the objects of national importance should be well identified under this principle. The next principle talks about law, justice and administration. It provides a uniform civil code, extremely important, article 44. So article 44 talks about a uniform civil code for all citizens, and then we under articles 39A we focus on equal justice, and this is an idea to provide equal opportunity for justice to everyone. And then article 50 talks about separating the executive and the judiciary. So two pillars of the government, the executive and the judiciary, should be separate under article 50. The last important principle pertains to the international peace and security under article 51. So it aims at promoting international peace and security, maintaining justice, respecting the foreign or international law, respecting the treaty obligations that we have, and encouraging settlements of international disputes by arbitration. Arbitration means there is no requirement to go to the International Court of Justice. The matter could be sorted out within the parties. So that is what is encouraged under article 51. Now, the directive principles of state policy are non-justifiable, they are non-enforceable, but they are a social moral force that comes into play. So you cannot enforce those like the fundamental rights, a very important difference. Similarly, DPSPs are under part 4 of the constitution, fundamental rights are under part 3 of the constitution. So we'll understand the differences between the two as we proceed as well. But the idea here is they can have political and social sanctions. So directive principles can have political and social sanctions, but ultimately they help the government in actually making the state a welfare state. Now, what are the economic welfares that we can see on the ground? Abolition of zamindari post-independence, Land Ceiling Act post-independence, two major efforts that have been seen. The next is Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Bill. This was passed in 2013 and replaced the Land Acquisition Act of 1894. The idea is to provide compensation and transparency. That means, let's say a land is being utilized for industrial development, for urbanization, then the people who were, the tribals who were, the forest dwellers who were residing there should be given due compensation and an appropriate place in lieu of that where they can settle. Similarly, for common good, nationalization of bank was done during Indira Gandhi government. In 1948, Minimum Wages Act was released, which identified the minimum wages that should be given for a work, and also there should be no discrimination on the pay based on who is working despite of the gender, caste, creed or religion. The next is Integrated Rural Development Program and Rural Landless Employment Guarantee Program. In 1989, they were transformed into the Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, which is extensively aiming at providing employment opportunities in rural areas. Then in 2016 came the Fasal Bima Yojana. The idea is farmers would pay a premium of 2% for the Rabi crop, 1.5% for the Kharif crop, 5% for the horticulture crop, and in case of any unseen natural calamity, their crop coverage would be done by the government, and there is no upper limit for the subsidy even if the premium balance is up to 90%. The next is PM Jan Dhan Yojana. This talks about opening the bank accounts more than we say 20 crore bank accounts were opened under the PM Jandan Yojana, and this covers a life insurance of 30,000 and 1 lakh of accidental coverage is done under the PM Jandan Yojana. Now, benefits under PM Jandan Yojana is a RuPay card is issued, and this has increased the deposits in the bank to nearly 300 billion rupees in the bank deposits. The next is in 2013, National Food Security Bill was passed. Now, this aims to provide quantity of quality food at affordable subsidized price. So, 67% of the population has this subsidized requirement, 75% in the rural area, 50% in the urban area, at a subsidized rate of 3 rupees for rice, 2 rupees for wheat, and 1 rupees for coarse grain. Even the pregnant mothers and lactating mothers are given 6,000 rupees for 6 months. There is a scheme for reformation of the public distribution system. It is also ensured that there is no loopholes by the government servants, and the food goes to the required person. All within the family, the eldest women of the family above age of 18 years would be held with the ration card, and all the ration would be issued in her name, and there would be a state level as well as a district level redressal mechanism where any issue could be resolved. The next in 2005, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act was released, which was later renamed as Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act as Manrega, and it talks about guaranteed 100 days of employment every 365 days to the persons, and this ensures basic livelihood to the unskilled laborers. The next is in 2016, PM Ujjwala Yojana was started, and this ensured that people now are not cooking on wood or coal, and they do have LPG connection. In line with this, nearly 50 million LPG cylinder connections were provided to below poverty line families, and within the budgetary mechanism, nearly rupees 80 billion was allocated for this scheme. In 2018, another scheme for the welfare for health was introduced under Ayushman Bharat, and this is a national public health insurance scheme. The idea is to provide coverage for low-income families. Bottom 50% of the families qualify for it, and every family would be covered for rupees 5 lakh per family per year, which is a significant amount of contribution for the family. The next is for the housing. In the rural area, it is the PM Gramin Awas, which is also known as the Indira Awas. In the urban area, it is the PM Shehri Awas, and this was in 2015. In 2022, both the schemes were renamed as Housing for All schemes. Now, as we said, protection of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, minorities become important. The weaker sections of the society is important. It is important to ensure that there is social justice, there is no unequitable distribution, there is no discrimination, and to ensure that there is reservation of SC/STs in educational institutions as well, prohibition of slaughtering of animals, slaughtering of cows to be checked, improvement in the public health to be done. For example, liquor has been banned in many states, for example, Bihar, Gujarat. The idea is to ensure that it improves the overall public health within the state. Also, promoting cottage industries through which we can say self-reliant India can be, the foundations for self-reliant India can be seen, and for that small scale industries board, Khadi and village industries boards have become active. The most important contribution of directive principles of state policies are they actually are a yardstick to understand how government is performing, to enlighten the people about the policies and the actions taken by the government, and to ensure whom they should vote, to provide a right direction to safeguard the citizens, and government would get a direction to make the law and order and the policies in the same line. Also, as mentioned previously, the directive principles are non-justifiable, they are non-enforceable, they are backed by the public opinion. That's the main thing. Now, coming on to the differences between the directive principles of state policies versus the fundamental rights. As mentioned, directive principles of state policy under part 4 of the constitution, fundamental rights under part 3. Directive principles are not enforceable by court of law. However, fundamental rights are enforceable by court of law because they are the right of an individual. When I say right to equality, it's a right and it's enforceable by court. Similarly, DPSPs are directions to the state how the things should be, but fundamental rights are restrictions to the state, and therefore they are limited in scope because they deal with individual rights. However, directive principles have a wider scope because they also talk about Article 51, which focuses on international peace and security. So they have a wide scope and they aim to establish a welfare state. However, fundamental rights aim to establish a political democracy. Another major difference. Now, another important thing is fundamental rights are actually written in legal language and must be implemented by the state, and once implemented they should not be violated. However, there is no such strict guidelines or charges against violation of the directive principles of state policy. It's just a direction that you have to preserve the monuments. What would be the consequences against the violation have not been actually laid down. So that is another important. And one last and most important thing, directive principles create privilege for citizens because we get the privilege of economic welfare, social welfare. However, fundamental rights are privilege which are in existence and the citizens can then enjoy those privileges. So, fundamental rights ensure that the privileges which are already there are enjoyed by the citizens. However, directive principles create these privileges for citizens like us. So those are some of the important differences between directive principles of state policy and fundamental rights. Very important concept here. So this was a quick update about directive principles, the major directive principles, the articles that we discussed under this, the differences with the fundamental rights and its importance. We'll be covering the remaining lectures on civics. Stay tuned.